Good morning, everyone. All good to go? Well, it's 10 p.m. last night, just off the coast of the Bay Islands. Cyclone Alfred was a Category 2 until midnight when it was downgraded to a Category 1. At about 1 a.m. this morning, it crossed over Moreton Island, somewhere around about Tangalooma, and just over an hour ago, so around 6 a.m, the Category 1 system was downgraded to a tropical low. It remains as a low just off the coast near Bribie Island. Our message this morning to Queenslanders is firstly one of gratitude, and secondly is one to continue to watch because there are still significant challenges ahead for this event, and we'll outline what they are in a moment. Those four key challenges, waves, wind, rainfall and flooding, have been those four stages that different areas have worked through at different times. I want to start with wind. Overnight, we recorded some wind speeds, including 107 kilometres at the Gold Coast Seaway, 93 kilometres per hour at the Brisbane Airport and 85 kilometres per hour at Redcliffe. We have seen some damage to some buildings. We've seen the loss of a roof of one of the apartment buildings, one of the older buildings on the Gold Coast. We've had quite a few instances of trees falling on homes, cars and power lines. To waves, this is where the good news of this story is. As the system didn't cross the coast on high tide, those prospects of storm tide inundation, Queenslanders were spared from that. To have no homes reported still right now that have had storm tide inundation is really a tremendous result. We have seen some extreme erosion because of it on the beaches, and there'll be some considerable damage there, and we've spoken about what that looks like to some of the key infrastructure on the beaches, particularly on the Gold Coast. But the fact that we have avoided the storm tide surge is a great story in all of this. The big challenge in the next few days is rainfall. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Matt from the Bureau to unpack what that looks like. But just to give you an indication of what occurred in the past 19 hours, we've had 240 mils recorded at Springbrook, 200 millimetres at Tallabudra and 100 millimetres at Mount Cotton. The challenges now, flash flooding, creek rises, they remain a real prospect with some of the rainfall predicted in the days ahead. We have to be ready for that prospect. And with already swollen catchments, the risk of flash flooding remains. I'm asking Queenslanders to continue to stay vigilant and go onto the disaster.qld.gov.au website and have a look if your property is in one of those zones. Be careful on the roads. Do the little things to keep you and your family safe. I want to assure Queenslanders that because we prepared well for this event and because they prepared well for this event, we can now move our focus to the clean-up in the days, hours ahead. We've seen a tremendous response from people across such a large populated area of our state, a tremendous response. I want to turn to power outages because I know this is something that people are certainly focused on. We're currently approaching 250,000 homes without power. That's the single biggest loss we have seen in over a decade since Oswald. The work needed to reconnect that is significant, but the ability and the desire of the men and women who'll do it is without peer. And Queenslanders need to know that right now there are damage assessments being done and already crews are being mobilised to get that job done. I've spoken in the days leading up to this that we had pre-positioned 1,200 staff from Energex. They are out there ready to rumble. And there are 800 staff from the other end of the state, the Ergon network, who will be joining them. 250,000 homes without power is a massive task, but it's a massive task that they are up to. And I have every faith that in the days ahead, Queenslanders will see the result of the planning that's gone into this, but also the dedication to making sure that such an essential service is reconnected. There's a couple of key bits of infrastructure that remain a priority. The Gold Coast University Hospital remains without mains power. It has been running on generators, which is, of course, was needed. But there are a number of other key bits of infrastructure where we need to urgently reattach power to. The water treatment plants at Mount Cotton and Alexandra Hills are without power. There are generators on site and staff are urgently attempting to reconnect those, and it is a race against the clock to try and do that in the minutes and hours ahead before those reservoirs run out of water. Now, I'm pleased to report the other 32 remain on and are working, but our focus is making sure that all 34 in that network continue, and I thank SEQ Water and all of the staff involved for that. I want to turn to where to from now. Queenslanders need to know there will be no daylight between the response and the recovery. We've promised that, we've done the work for it, and so too have the state. And because we've redeployed and made sure that we've pre-deployed, we have all hands on deck right now. Right now, there are crews from Energex, Council, SES, the Rural Fireys, the Queensland Fire and Rescue. They are there standing ready in the field to do what needs to be done. And it is going to be a big task, but it's a task that we are up to and a task that Queenslanders will respond to. I want to finish with one final message to the people of the South East, and indeed to everyone who has expressed great wishes from across the country. The first is one of thanks. I want to thank the way that the nation and indeed right across the state, people have looked and lent their love and support during a difficult time. I want to thank the people in a largely populated area, the vast majority of whom have never been through a cyclone before, and I can imagine would have been pretty daunting last night, many with no power, wind and rain, and yet they did exactly what was needed. And I really want to thank people for the way that they handled this experience. Likewise, I want to thank the crews who are out there to see the job through, and that will occur. There remains a real risk of flooding in the days ahead, but this isn't anything that this part of the state hasn't dealt with before. It's a challenge that Queenslanders have risen to time and time again, and it's a challenge that they'll rise to yet again this time. And I have every faith in the days ahead. Despite those challenges, Queenslanders will continue to take this in their stride. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Premier, and good morning all. Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred has been downgraded below the tropical cyclone strength as of 6 a.m. this morning. It is currently near the coast of Bribie Island and moving west-northwest at 9 kilometres per hour. Overnight, tropical cyclone Alfred weakened from a Category 2 system to a Category 1 system as it approached Moreton Island around midnight last night. It then crossed Moreton Island around 1 a.m. as a Category 1 system and continued to move across Moreton Bay before weakening further, and as I mentioned at 6 a.m. this morning was downgraded below tropical cyclone strength. Ex-tropical cyclone Alfred is now expected to move inland over the coming 12 to 24 hours, and by this evening it will move north of Toowoomba and further inland this evening. A severe weather warning remains in place across the southeast, with the risk of locally heavy to intense rainfall and the potential for damaging wind gusts continuing. The primary concern within the severe weather warning is for those locally intense and very heavy rainfall amounts, but there also is the chance of damaging wind gusts with the system or with those rain showers and thunderstorms as the system moves inland. I'll talk through a few of the impacts we saw. The Premier mentioned that we saw wind gusts up to 107 kilometres per hour around the Gold Coast Seaway, but we also saw wind gusts to 93 kilometres per hour around at Brisbane Airport and 85 kilometres per hour measured at Redcliffe. As the system is weakened below Category 1 strength, those winds are easing. But as I said, that severe weather warning remains in place. Although the winds have eased, the large swell and wave conditions will continue along the Queensland coast, and then we will see those ease as we move into Sunday and Monday, but ongoing coastal erosion is likely. There is no longer a risk of a significant storm surge, and sea levels are not expected to exceed the normal highest tides. Rainfall is the key risk as we move forward, as well as the flooding. Rainfall totals of over 250 millimetres have already been observed around the scenic rim, and we've seen widespread totals of 100 to 200 millimetres, both on the Gold Coast but also stretching up into the southern parts of Brisbane. As the remnants of TC Alfred moves inland, we'll see more tropical moisture streaming across southeast Queensland, and we are expecting widespread totals of 300 to 500 millimetres, with localised amounts of 800 millimetres plus possible in some areas of southeast Queensland, particularly again around the southern part of where ex-tropical cyclone Alfred tracks. In terms of the flooding, that heavy to intense rainfall is expected to produce the risk of dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding and widespread minor to major riverine flooding across much of the southeast. Flood watches remain in place for the Mary River, the creeks and rivers of the Sunshine Coast, the Pine and Caboolture rivers, the Gold Coast rivers and creeks, the upper and lower Brisbane catchments, as well as the Condamine, McIntyre and Weir rivers. A major flood warning is current for the Logan and Albert rivers, with moderate to major flooding possible from later today, and we are seeing sharp river rises through the Logan-Albert system. Major flood warnings are also now current for the Bremer River and Worrell Creek, with major flooding possible from later in the weekend, depending on the forecast rainfall. So in summary, ex-tropical cyclone Alfred has been downgraded below tropical cyclone strength, and it is currently sitting just near Bribie Island after crossing Moreton Island last night as a Category 1 system. Heavy to locally intense rainfall leading to flash and riverine flooding now becomes the major concern as the ex-tropical cyclone moves inland, and the risk of damaging wind gusts continue, but they will be more associated with those showers and thunderstorms. The Bureau will continue to monitor this system and update warnings. So I urge the community to stay up to date via the Bureau's webpage and the Bureau's app, and stay alert from updated messaging from emergency services, particularly in relation to the rainfall and the flooding as this situation continues to evolve. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Well, people have done a phenomenal job listening to warnings, following advice and preparing themselves and their homes. Thank you. We need you to keep doing that. That means listening to warnings and staying up to date. As you've heard from the Premier and from the Bureau this morning, the cyclone has been downgraded. It does mean that some of those risks, in particular in relation to wind, are easing, but there are still continued risks across the landscape. And again, we highlight the high potential for flash flooding, riverine flooding over the coming days. If it's flooded, forget it. A couple of updates about Commonwealth assistance. The Prime Minister announced yesterday that New Zealand are sending 66 disaster assistance recovery team personnel to assist. That is so welcome, and we say thank you to our New Zealand friends. These personnel will arrive in the coming days. There are now ADF personnel in the Northern Rivers supporting the SES. I messaged the Mayor of Lismore this morning, checking in after an anxious night. I've also been engaged with the local member, Janelle Saffin, and I know that this will be a difficult time for Northern Rivers communities who've come a long way since those floods in 2022. They've been so amazing. They've prepared themselves. They've looked after themselves. And again, to them, I say thank you. Just finally, I want to say thank you more generally to the people of the region. People have been terrific. Our emergency services personnel have been terrific. We are so grateful for all of the work that everybody has done to prepare themselves. There is more to do. We are engaged, we are prepared, and we thank you for all of your efforts.
Good morning. I can confirm that we've had no loss of life and we have no missing persons as a result of this flood event, which is, frankly terrific at this stage. Overnight, we responded to a large number of jobs with trees down, damaging houses in suburbs such as Elanora, Robina, Mount Cotton, Eden's Landing, and we've seen a lot of vegetation down, power lines down right across the Gold Coast and Brisbane areas. We did see an apartment complex in Labrador on the Gold Coast suffered damage. 21 persons were safely evacuated from that apartment complex and are now in our evacuation centres, with one lady suffering some minor injuries, but she's in good health. There were no significant reports of damage to houses or infrastructure on Stradbroke, Moreton Island or our lower Bay Islands as the tropical cyclone passed over that area, although we do probably expect as people come out to inspect their houses, return to the islands, inspect their businesses, we will see reports of minor damages moving forward. The SES received 77 jobs overnight, 45 on the Gold Coast, and the majority of these requests were for storm damage and structural damage, leaky roofs, tarping, and assisting the community with their residents. We do see a large number of traffic lights out this morning as a result of power, so if you are travelling on the roadways today, please be careful while you're moving about. There are also communication outages, particularly in the Gold Coast and Hinterland area. Most of these communication outages are related to power, and we'll see the majority of them come back on as the power gets restored in those areas. The Queensland Police responded to 88 disaster-related jobs during the night. Most of them were assisting the community, traffic-related and obviously power line-related to ensure that live power lines were kept safe. The Queensland Fire Department responded to 160 jobs since 6 p.m. Last night, mainly for fallen trees and power lines, and the Queensland Fire Department advised me they had no swiftwater rescues. We still have 34 evacuation centres open with 396 people in those evacuation centres, and I've been advised through the disaster network that those evacuation centres will remain open, particularly as we move into the threat of flood-related issues. We issued 7 emergency warnings overnight and yesterday, mainly take shelter now on the Gold Coast, Redland City Island communities, Moreton Island, Moreton Bay and some areas of Brisbane, and an alert was issued for Currumbin Valley saying it was too dangerous to leave shelter in place. I'd just like to talk about flooding. The event's not over, as we've heard from the Bureau. There is a lot of rain forecast today and in the coming days. Heavy and intense rainfall is expected to fall today in the Brisbane, Gold Coast and as far west as Toowoomba. What I'm really concerned about today, and the emergency services are concerned about today, is that this could cause rapid flash flooding, which could catch our motorists unaware if they're moving about. Can I assure you we have our resources pre-deployed, police, fire, SES, as well as our swift water crews, but this flash flooding could pose a significant risk to life today, particularly if you drive into floodwaters or play in those floodwaters. If you're moving about the roads, please have a plan, please assess your route and stay in contact with our traffic website on road closures, particularly if you're moving into those low-lying areas. The preparedness that we've seen undertaken by everyone, including the community and emergency services, has put us in the position we're in today, but I really don't want to see a loss of life today as we move into flash flooding and riverine flooding due to bad decisions. There is the potential for major riverine flooding over the coming days in the flood watch areas outlined by the Bureau, and there are major flood warnings for the Logan River, the Bremer River and Worrell Creek. Yesterday, the emergency services continued to door knock over 2,000 homes at our flood risk areas. The flood maps for these areas are available on the council dashboards, so can I ask you to familiarise yourself with those areas? Don't wait for the police to knock on your door, and put a plan in place. Know when to leave if you have to leave. Leaving at the time when the water's coming up to your house is not the time to leave. Finally, can I just reassure everyone we have over 200 additional police today conducting patrols from the Gold Coast to Brisbane, in addition to our local officers on the ground, to ensure that we can keep the community safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Premier, did we dodge a bullet here? What do you say to people who think we overreacted to the measures we've taken?
Queenslanders were overwhelmingly brilliant, and you just can't underestimate how much an experience like this tests people. There's always the unknown, and the fact that people decided to do the right things and put those preparations in place means that they are well prepared for the next phase, and the next challenge will be heavy rain and flooding that comes with that. But look, I've said from day dot in this that these extreme weather events like this, they're always challenging, but you do get through them if you do the little things. And I've seen that from one end of Queensland to the other, and overwhelmingly people listen, people respond, and I think that's the nature of a resilient and tough state.
Can we expect schools to return on Monday, and when might we see public transport return?
Good question. Regarding schools and public transport, that will be done every day, updated for the following day. And I want Queenslanders to know that we will give you the opportunity to be able to plan the day ahead. So we will update Queenslanders on schools about what schools look like tomorrow for Monday, and that'll be done in a clear and calm and measured way. We will have all of that information on our disaster.qld website. There's also the schools closure website. The decision for Monday will be made on Sunday and communicated to people so that they are able to put in place the things they need to go about their life.
Has there been any reported flooding so far in your houses or any business?
No inundation from storm tide at all, which quite frankly is amazing. Obviously, the rainfall is upon us in the next couple of days. And what we're asking people is, if you are in one of those low-lying areas and you are in a place where you know it floods, please do the preparations and please have a plan. If you are new to the area, go and check those websites on that disaster.qld.gov.au website. Know if you are in a low-lying area to be able to respond. Deal with it in the same calm and measured way that you have to date.
Did people leave their houses at this stage?
Yeah, look, throughout this, I haven't sought to dictate orders to people. We've given the advice and people have responded accordingly. Now, I would suggest to you that right now, being on the beach at the Gold Coast is not a great use of resources for emergency services personnel to have to stop people running on eroded beaches with walkways and viewing platforms that are holding on by not much. So that advice gets put out there. If you need to drive, if you're an emergency services worker or if you're someone who's going to be a critical part of the state getting back on their feet, of course you should drive, of course. But if you're someone who just wants to go and have a sticky beak, I'd suggest it's probably best to be at home and take your time there. Look, I have this view that the vast majority of people, if you give them the information, respond in a normal and a sensible way. And I'd rather communicate to them rather than the very small percentage of people who won't do the right thing.
The Insurance Council had previously estimated that the damage bill from this event could be into the billions of dollars. Do we expect that to be much lower?
Well, the event's not over. So let's say to people like the insurance industry that we want you to stick around for the long haul, and we want you to be very supportive with people during difficult times if that eventuates from flooding. In the meantime, those people who have had impacts, and we've got some reports of trees on homes and people have lost cars, and that's always very difficult for them. We would like to see the insurance industry be good partners in that, and we'll be making sure that they are.
How long is that?
We'll take it day by day and we'll communicate it day by day. And wherever possible, I want Queenslanders to get back to work, and I want the state to be open for business. But we'll do it when it's safe. So every day we will communicate what the day after looks like, and the moment school can return, the moment life can go back to normal, you bet it will. It's important the state know that.
Particularly concerned is people who have elective surgeries Thursday, Friday.
Yes.
Come back.
Yep. elective surgery will be communicated directly from the Health and Hospital Network to the patient, but the Health Minister will also be making sure that I'm made aware of it, and I'll be communicating that as well. So we're most grateful for the people who didn't have elective surgery, who had that postponed on Thursday and Friday. You'll note that we did go ahead with school, and we went ahead with elective surgery on Wednesday, and on Wednesday we told people about Thursday. We'll do the same for the week ahead, and I assure Queenslanders our focus on reducing that elective surgery waiting list is as strong as ever, and those Queenslanders who weren't able to get elective surgery on those dates, we will endeavour to catch up very, very quickly.
It's going to be more difficult to convey the seriousness of future weather events, given we've had a delay to this one and it's not been as serious as we first thought.
We will give the information honestly, timely, clearly, concisely, and people will respond. And I think that's the mark of how Queenslanders do respond. And as I said to you the other day, Alex, I always take this view that overwhelmingly humans are good and want to do the right thing, and if you give them the information, they do. And I've seen it at both ends of the state, and I've seen recoveries from Category 5s, and I've seen recoveries from things that don't eventuate as a cyclone and turn into flooding situations, and we saw that with Jasper not so long ago in Cairns. No system is ever the same, but if you give the information in real time, if you do the preparation, if you take people into your trust, people overwhelmingly will respond. And so far, it's you couldn't fault the performance of Queenslanders.
Next week is NAPLAN.
Yep.
Are we going to have NAPLAN this year?
Good question. I spoke to the Education Minister just yesterday, and again, we have waited, and we will communicate with parents about NAPLAN. It's on Wednesday. It's a very important part of a child's journey in school, and so we will make sure we communicate ahead of that date. But we're giving every chance for it to proceed.
Given this didn't actually cross the South East Queensland mainland as a tropical cyclone, does this constitute a cyclone hitting the South East Queensland coast?
I would focus on the impacts from the system. It certainly crossed the Bay Islands as a Category 1 system, and then the impacts we saw across the Gold Coast and indeed in Brisbane, and the flooding we're expecting over the coming days, all those impacts obviously affected us and occurred. The exact coastal crossing times and those features will be analysed in good time, and I would again focus on the impacts, and I'd also focus on the rainfall and the flooding we're still expecting.
Good question. How long will the flooding rain last? Like how many days is that likely to be?
The next 24 hours are the key, but extending into Sunday, so we'll still see sort of northeasterly winds and moisture and heavy rainfall feeding in through Sunday, but it then will ease up as we move into Monday and Tuesday. There'll still be some showers around, so it's the next 24 hours, and then in the early part of Sunday is the main risk period. So we'll wait and see those rainfall totals, but at this stage it does look like we'll see significant rain over the coming days, particularly in the next 24 hours.
Thanks very much.